Yo, what's up? It's Johnny King. And another episode of the Becoming Kings podcast. If you're watching the video on YouTube, you're going to see that this podcast episode is going to be out of this world because I've got a sweet background where I am orbiting the earth. And beyond that, I want you to just imagine for me for a second. My next guest on this episode, just imagine he and I, the sun is setting. We're in Mexico. We're drinking Mai Tais or Coronas. And we're sitting not on the beach, which you would think we would be, but we're sitting on our respective toilets. We both got Montezuma's Revenge. This was only like a month or two ago.
I'm having PTSD.
Sprague,
oh my god.
Yeah. Joshua Sprague, we were celebrating your 40th, which was so awesome. So much fun to be with you. Obviously, we've known each other for a long time. One of my best of friends, my book writing coach. The dude is a fucking legend. He's a best-selling author, skier. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a creator of the 30-day book writing challenge, which has helped which is crazy, over 8,500 students write their high-quality nonfiction books really fast. And I'm one of that number. So, dude, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, buddy, and thank you for helping me relive that glorious porcelain throne moment, or multiple porcelain throne moments. So
man, some of you that follow me online probably saw some of the, not the bad stuff, but some of my notices here and there of, oh man, kicking the feet up. But it was pretty awesome. We went down to Mexico, right? Like a month and a half ago. And
a little over a month ago, yeah.
Yeah, we all had some food that led us to
a purifying experience.
A very cleansing, a very guttural cleansing experience.
Yeah, it's kind of like we grew up in the same religion, right? So
yeah.
There's a saying from one of the hymns or something that was like, cleanse the foul senses within. So that's kind of how I felt like.
The foul senses. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was very much, the foul smells and everything else from within. But gratefully we both recovered. We did have a wonderful moment together when we both were saying we're via text many days after getting home that our bowels back to normal. I think this is the best way to start a podcast.
This is right. Like, let's just talk about the real shit, the literal shit right away.
The literal shit. Yeah. But see how I hooked them. They were like, ooh, what's going on? Joshua and Johnny sitting watching the sunset, and then my stomach gurgling, and then I'm running off to the bathroom. Yeah.
I mean, you drew me in. I was in, and I was there,
Yeah.
And then I got all the PTSD, but
oh man, it still was an epic trip. And Sayulita is an amazing place down in Mexico, but I wouldn't suggest drinking the water per se. So, dude, what I love about you, there's a lot I love about you, but something that I feel like I talk about often on the podcast that I think you are even way more masterful at than I am is like streamlining life and business, and like just making things as efficient as possible, which you've done with this whole book writing process, which is why I hired you. Was very, very don't get me wrong, writing a book was not easy for me because it also triggered a lot of stuff, and I've talked about that on the podcast, but emotionally. But in terms of like the actual process, it was pretty simple. That's
the hardest part of writing a book too, right?
Yeah, like
all the
you've got the
stuff.
framework. Well, but then you also there's a lot of nuances that you have, especially when it comes to like marketing the book, becoming a best-selling author. Like I wouldn't have been able to do that without your help either. So I'm indebted to you for sure. But if you don't mind, maybe fill the listeners and viewers in, those that don't know you, a little bit about your backstory, because you've definitely pivoted all this stuff, and I've known you long enough to know like some things haven't all worked out. You've had your challenges, but here you are with what looks like a fake background, but it's actually your real background. It's beautiful out there in California.
It is nice. It's been
a beautiful
hot,
place.
But
yeah,
I'm chilling, enjoying.
Yeah. Speaking of hot, tell us about you, bro. You're so hot. Your coloring, your ginger coloring is so familiar.
I actually have to say I'm pretty tan for how gingerific I am. So
Yeah,
I
you and me
joke
both.
that my like freckles come out in the sun and it's like a shield. So
Yeah.
yeah, dude, I don't know, lots of ups and downs along the way for sure, but my background is I actually used to work in the ski industry for a long time. So I was a ski patroller,
Right.
an avalanche technician, and that's what I was doing for a number of years before I ever got
what did you get? I'm sorry to interrupt. What did you get your degree in? Because we both went to the same school. People probably don't know that either. But
Yeah, I have my degree in religion, biblical studies.
religion. Yeah, biblical studies, which is so
then I was
interesting
like,
to
of
know
course
that.
you should go throw dynamite at snow, obviously.
Yeah.
Logical.
Yeah, logical. That's right. Biblical studies, which is very scholarly of you. You are a very smart guy, and you like to read.
The funny thing is, though, is I realized, when I was almost done with the degree, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to go be a professor, and I'm not going to be a pastor. So
Yeah.
what am I going to do with this thing? But I think that, we can talk about it later, but it's certainly woven into still a lot of what I do, just how I approach like business and life and doing things, kind of weaving between like the strategic and the spiritual. And I think that that oftentimes gets neglected with a lot of people, where they're just like so focused on one or the other, and then they don't really create results without
which is why I bring
between
it
those
up.
two areas.
Yeah, and I wanted to give a little bit of context because it's like I think so many guys too are like, oh, I got this degree, or I've been working in this industry for so long. How could I make a pivot or a jump? And it's just cool. And I want you to continue with your kind of your story, but like, okay, religion, and then you went to go be a ski bum, so to speak, quote unquote.
Exactly, is what it was. Yeah.
So keep going with that, because skiing obviously is one of your loves of your life.
I mean, it is the thing that just fills me up the most. Outside of like relationships, it's like the activity that just, it's the best. But anyway, I think the thing that I love skiing and I loved working in the industry. It was a lot of fun. The problem was that it was like a 6 month, a year kind of thing, basically, maybe like 7 months if it was a long season, like really, really good season, but you couldn't control that. And then I didn't make a lot of money either, right? So you're like only making like $12 an hour kind of doing this thing. So it's like really fun getting paid to ski all day and like throw dynamite, make avalanches. It was a lot of fun, but like it was stressful the rest of the year, where you're like, okay, what am I going to do for 5-6 months to kind of pay the bills? And I remember very distinctly, and I think people can relate to this as well, is like whenever you work somewhere or you're in an environment, you kind of have two choices. You either absorb to that environment, or something propels you out of that environment. And like, I know you used to work with, a lot of people with like weight loss, and everybody knows like if all of your friends are overweight, then you're likely to be overweight. If all of your friends are broke, you're likely to be broke. If you're in an industry where everybody thinks that this is the path, then you're likely to do that unless you create a new trajectory for yourself or ask different questions. And that's kind of what happened to me. Is I remember having these conversations with myself, basically, and asking the question like, hey, how do I still get to ski 100 days a year, but like make a lot of money or make a good living outside of this? And I didn't know the answer to that question at all. I had no clue what it is.
But you had the question.
But I had the question. I think that's the most important thing for everybody, is like, you don't have to know how you're going to connect all these dots to get where you want to go, but you have to know where you do want to go, and then the dominoes can kind of fall in place to lead you there. And I had a lot of trial and error with stuff. Like I remember like my first online business was basically like writing articles about like orchid gardening, which I don't know anything about, but I like bought this course that was teaching me about that, and I was like, this is so lame. But I was doing it. And then I had a business with my first wife where we were helping people basically eat healthier. And I learned a lot though through that about marketing. We wrote a cookbook. how to print things, get things published. So like
so cool.
A lot of these things were kind of layering the steps, I guess, for what was to come next. And after a while, I realized that I kind of wanted to like branch out and do my own thing and get out from kind of under the thumb of this other business that we'd created. And I thought to myself, well, like, what's the best way to kind of establish credibility? And I realized like the most timeless thing absolutely is to have a book. And still to this day, that's the thing. Like, since the printing press has been invented, that is the one thing that is not going to go away, right? Like, that's the one thing. Having a book is the one main thing that has helped experts, leaders, business owners, influencers, like whatever they end up calling it, in this generation, establish some sort of authority and credibility. So that's what there's a helicopter going over. But that's what I ended up deciding on. The problem was, like a lot of people, I had no idea what I was doing, right? So I spent basically like 9 months writing, rewriting, throwing my work away, thinking it was crap, wondering if anybody's ever going to read this, facing all of my stories, all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until I had coffee actually with our mutual friend Lewis House when I was down in LA briefly at the time before I lived here. And he basically just called me out and he was like, hey, dude, I wrote my first book, whatever it was, his LinkedIn book, I think, in like 30 days or something. If you don't write your book in the next 30 days, you owe me $250. And I was like super, super, super broke at the time. So like $250 for me was like an enormous amount of money. And then, and then, he's like somebody I respected. So I didn't want to embarrass myself either. So I was like, okay, yes, but I still didn't know how to do it. Right. I just had committed to this. And then that urgency, I guess, triggered something in me to figure out what did work. And I ended up writing my first book in 21 days. It then went on to become a #1 Amazon bestseller. And then people started basically asking me from there, like, how did you do this? And, that's how things snowballed into actually helping other people do that. It wasn't intentional by any means. It was just, a tried and true method to adding more credibility and establishing kind of my influence, I guess. So, which I think is the reason why a lot of people want to write books. So,
yeah. You leapfrogged over. I know you talked about obviously skiing and then kind of doing some of the nutritional stuff, cookbooks and that sort of thing. But you didn't mention the year that you spent over in Ireland stripping in that Irish bar.
Yeah.
Getting back to your roots.
I mean, do I have a good like emoji thing that I can put on here? I feel like this is an appropriate. I just figured out how to do these video filters, like literally 5 minutes ago. So
yeah,
I don't know what is. I don't know. There's no good Irish things on here. That's annoying. This is as close as it gets. Right? Don't leave me hanging.
Oh, that's really well done.
I don't know. There's no shamrocks.
That's beautiful. No shamrocks. No pot at the end of the pot of gold at the end of the
but
rainbow.
You know what there is? Pizza
emoji. Oh man, I love
could be.
Yeah, and I know it's going to push people towards YouTube, but I've heard that story too. He's told me a few times how Lewis has a way of kind of like pushing one's timeline, and condensing it, which is always good to have a friend like Lewis. And in that regard, I do remember when you were helping me write, because I started writing in, I believe, May or June of 2020, because like, what else are you going to do when you're in a lockdown, right? And I remember I set this goal of like 90 days. People decided they were going to
write books in 2020. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I set a goal of 90 days, which I'm like, okay, like what else am I going to do? I'm just going to sit here and hammer on it, and I've seen your testimonials. I've seen your ads online. I know that people are able to accomplish writing a book, which is crazy, in 30 days, which is amazing. Just kind of following your format. But I do feel like it's what I like is knowing you now and seeing how much you've grown just in so many different ways in terms of your maturity, in terms of like what you believe is possible for you and for other people. But then I also enjoy remembering where you were at. It kind of helps me bridge like, okay, because I'm, writing that book was really challenging for me, and whether it be 30 days or 90 days, like it took me a year maybe from start to putting it out there, which I thought was so long. But then I talked to other people like, I've been writing a book for 7 years. So I'm like, oh, geez, but I do feel like there's a lot of people. Well, you tell me, are there a lot of people out there who have been writing a book for God knows how long, or maybe they've given up, but like,
yeah, a lot of the people that come into my world have been trying to write a book for years, sometimes even decades. So it's not uncommon. And
yeah,
the thing for me is whether somebody, and we do have a really, really, really high percentage of people that do actually write their books in 30 days through the challenge. But if it takes you a little bit longer, if it's 45 days or 60 days or 90 days or even 6 months, when it would normally have taken you, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years,
10 years,
to me, that's still collapsed an enormous amount of time. Right. And most of the time for people, the delay is almost always internal. It's never like what's the structure of what do I do? Because that's all clearly laid out,
totally
inside of that program and everything. It's just more of you wrestling sometimes with like, oh, what are they going to think about this? Or is this any good? Or man, what do I have to say that hasn't been said before? Doubting yourself when it's kind of like anything, like when you're about to do something that will push you and grow you, then all of a sudden your mind starts to go crazy and create all the resistance as to why you shouldn't do the thing, right? Like when you're about to approach a girl or something, I'm married, I haven't done that for a while, but when that happens, it's like, should I not? Like all the stories go in your head, and she's like, that's the resistance right before that happens,
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Well, how have you, because I know, again, some of your story, you've battled through a lot of resistance a lot of different times with different businesses, because you've had a lot of different, which I also love about you in terms of how entrepreneurial you are. Because you started kind of doing the book thing, then you went into another business, drop shipping, something like that, right?
Yeah, I had an e-commerce company for a bit. Yeah, after I wrote Smash, my first book, then I ended up building kind of a consultancy really around writing books. And so I would actually ghostwrite people's books. I ghostwrote half a dozen bestsellers and helped a ton of people launch their books and write their books through my process, which has gotten refined over time to what it is now. But I think the thing that I got frustrated with was that even though, clients were awesome and stuff like that, because it was more of like a consulting thing, I had to work a lot with people one-on-one. So there's only like so much scale with it. It felt like I had to trade a lot of time for dollars with that. And so I got kind of tired of that model, but I didn't have a better model in mind, basically. And so it's like, well, I'm still going to kind of do it, after I'd been doing it for like 3 or 4 years, whatever. But I want to do some other things entrepreneurially as well. And so, I started a online e-commerce company and learned a lot about, scaling a business and running traffic and all that kind of stuff, which then I ended up bringing back into what I do now 100%. With the book writing stuff, learned how to run ads the right way and all that kind of stuff, learned how to scale, so that I can impact thousands of customers, not just like dozens or hundreds, everything stacks on top of each other. But there was so many ups and downs and moments where I wanted to quit.
100%. And that's why I wanted to, like I said, just bring it up, because I think guys that are listening probably are guys that have been going to men's retreats, have been doing breath work, have been listening to podcasts, reading books, working on themselves, trying different, business ventures, different relationships, trial and error, successes, failures. And sometimes without on a 45-minute to an hour long podcast, we can't get into like, gosh, those infinite moments of just that you've been through, that I've been through, where you're like, God damn it, this sucks. Or like, I'm going to give up on this. And you're like, really? But what's the alternative? And you don't give up. You keep pursuing, and you finally break through. And then from the outside, it looks like, oh, you're just killing it. Like it just came so easy to you, And I don't think people, looking at your business would realize how challenging and how much shit you've been through, to get to where you're at. It's just valuable to highlight that.
I think that's the case for, anybody who has some perception of success to people, right? Like there's so many ups and downs.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the things though, that regardless of what the business was at the time or how the model evolved, there were certain constants that never changed. And so, I told you earlier, like that question that kind of triggered the whole journey was, how do I get to ski 100 days a year and
Right.
still make good money?
Yeah.
That never left. And there was never a point where I'm like, you could never pay me enough to compromise on figuring that out. And so I think that for people, it's figuring out what that thing is for you. The model can change a million times. You can jump to different businesses. You can do all sorts of different things, but like, is the core desire underneath that enough to motivate you? And truthfully, what I've realized, I used to think everybody had it all the time. But I've realized that it's actually not true. Like some people will compromise on that. They will sell that out. And it's like kind of brutal to say that, but it's true. Some people will sell that out, and you want to be the kind of person that's not going to sell out that dream, because there's going to be the ups and the downs guaranteed, like so many of them, and nothing else will keep you through that.
Right.
At least I don't think.
Yeah, but I also feel like it's almost like it's a much needed ingredient to writing one's book. Like you got to have some sort of hero's journey or some sort of like trial and overcoming those, deepest, darkest fears or whatever in whatever story you're telling,
Totally.
and maybe not in every single book, but I feel like it's just like music. If you're writing music, if you're writing lyrics, like you want the listener or the reader to feel the shit that you've been through,
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a prerequisite to writing. And I'm just saying that I don't know. You would know a lot better than I would, but I feel like that stuff helps for me at least connect with a writer.
I mean, I do agree with you on that for sure. One of the you probably remember this from the book writing process, but one of the concepts to talk about is, your mess being your message, and really diving into, and I know a lot of people say that, but like, what does that actually mean in the context of writing a book? That means that typically the driver for wanting to write like a nonfiction book, which is what I help people with, is you have gone through some sort of cataclysmic moment, or that has led you to figure something out or see something that you would not have seen without that. Sometimes it's a big deal. Sometimes it's not as much of a big deal. Like maybe it's just like a pure business book versus much more of like a personal transformation. But either way, there are always those elements of struggle that then lead to insights and breakthroughs, which then lead to this desire to share it and help other people in some way. And I feel like it's almost this healing cycle in a way, where it's like you have crap you go through, you overcome the crap, you figure out a process, and then you desire to like transmute that in some way by delivering it again to somebody else, so that you can save them in some way. Not like save them from, I don't mean like save them in their life, but like help them in some sort of way.
Yeah.
And I think we're just coded that way, like as humans, right? Like, doesn't it feel good when somebody comes to you and they're like, Johnny, I love your work. Like what you do made such a big difference in my life. Like that kind of affirmation for us, especially as men, I think, is like, it's just like, yes, you want to make money. Yes, you want to have a profitable business. Yes, you want all that stuff, but you also want to do shit that matters.
Yeah. Leave a legacy of some kind.
Yeah. In whatever form that is.
Yeah. And I think that's why I love kind of what you're doing from the standpoint of, helping people not only write a book, but it's still like coming back to like, but what's the end, what are you ultimately working towards in designing a life that they love, while still having this book or a message that has an impact on other people's lives. And I think that's the important part, is how they all kind of works together, because just writing a book to write a book, it's like making money to make money. But what can it be a vessel or a vehicle for in terms of creating, something greater in your life, and I think a big part of this podcast obviously is helping guys live like kings in whatever manner that is for them, just living abundantly, and when I think about you, I think about, you have a very abundant and fearless approach to life. You know
There's
what
a
I'm saying?
backstory to that. Maybe we'll tell someday.
Fearless. Yes. You are fearless though. Yeah. But I do feel like
I try.
Yeah. Well, you're maybe not fearless, but you definitely blow through your fears, no longer letting them overwhelm you. And I think that's a big part of, like you said,
Some
writing
fears,
a book.
yeah, some fears no, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to the thing you said towards the beginning, which is like incorporating both the kind of the spiritual and the strategic, if you will, the spiritual and the human, the male, not the male, the masculine, the feminine, whatever, the yin and the yang. Is it just those two pieces that are instrumental, or do you feel like there's a lot of other components that need to be input into one's book when writing? Like, it can't just be, if it's a how-to, I feel like, cool, it's a how-to, but it's not going to necessarily have the impact. I do feel like interweaving in that spiritual, that human, the emotional side of things is so important, especially with a nonfiction book. But what other ingredients do you feel like is important that those that are listening are like, oh, I need to give that some more thought, or I could actually use Joshua's help with that because I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody has a little bit different reasons for writing their book too. Like if, somebody is like, I don't know, let's say they're like a financial planner or something like that, and they want to use their book just to get more clients, then that can be a little bit more direct. Like, here's, 7 strategies that you can do to get, 12% annualized returns in your 401k every year, no matter what, or like whatever it may be. That's a much more like how-to oriented, because they're trying to get some sort of client on the back end. Whereas a book like yours, there's a lot more layers to it, right? Because you're dealing in your brand with these different elements of what it means to become a king and to be a man in today's society. And it's a complex and convoluted subject. And so I think that the human element that you're talking about is so important to it. I think regardless of whether it's like a how-to or a transformational book or a memoir, whatever it may be, one big thing that I see people consistently, I guess, miss or neglect is that they've, like most people who want to write a book have usually been told you should write a book, or they've had some desire for it or inkling for that for a little bit of time. And so you kind of get wrapped up in your own story in a way, and that's not a bad thing. It's human nature to be like, oh man, I did this, I overcame this, and now I want to transmute this and help other people, right? Like we just talked about. But when it comes to writing a book, it's a product still. And so this is where kind of the strategic and intentional side of things comes into play, and that it's something that people buy, and people buy things because they're either going to entertain them or they're going to add value, right, to their life in some sort of way, or help them solve a problem. And so one of the things that, especially when people go through like the first week of the 30-day book writing challenge, they get this brain shift in a big way that they're super grateful for, because we help them cement very clearly who the book is for, how it's going to help them, and what the outcome that they're hoping to accomplish by reading that book. And so that's a roundabout way of saying that it's super important to remember that this is a product, and that you want to be thinking about a specific reader and customer in mind, because that's who's buying this, and they're reading it and buying it for a reason. And so your job as an author is not just to tell your stories because it's cathartic for you. Although if you want to do that, that's great. Like some people do just write a book because they want to like share all of their stuff in a memoir and pass that down to their grandkids, just so they know all the stories, all the World War II stories, all that kind of stuff, which is totally great. But for most people who actually want to use the book, then kind of like I did, where you use it as a tool, the way you're using it, it's it shares your philosophy, your frameworks, all that kind of stuff that can then also help grow your business and serve clients and all that kind of stuff. Then it's really important to think about who that reader is up front and be very, very clear with framing that. You probably remember us going through like that exercise together,
Yep.
and how, I mean, you tell me, but in my experience, it's always been very eye-opening and helpful for people to have that much clarity up front.
Yeah. I do feel like like when I read your emails versus emails or newsletters, or even my book that I wrote, and our mutual buddy Bradley is often saying to me, like, you should make it more about your reader, less about you. And I'm like, yeah, I get that intellectually. I have a hardest time. And I put a lot of me into like my book. I just wrote through my own stories, attempting though to then draw out lessons learned that hopefully would impact the reader. But I have a real hard time sometimes focusing on or putting myself, well, that's the interesting thing is I'm saying that out loud. I feel like
I don't think you
sometimes,
do.
yeah, I don't
feel like
know.
you're good at it.
I feel like I empathize, so I feel like I can put myself in other people's shoes, but then I do oftentimes I have this little thing of like guilt, like, do I talk about myself too much? Am I narcissistic? Am I like, but I have a hard time relating. You know how you just have a conversation and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I went through the same thing. I went through blah, 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 blah. And sometimes the other person's like, well, we weren't talking about you, but cool, Okay. So I digress.
I think there's a certain element of that has to be
Yeah.
there, like especially when it's like your personal brand, like you. It's like it's the Johnny King podcast, right? It's not.
Yeah.
And it's similar with me. It's like this is my process for writing books. There's other people that teach how to write books and stuff. But I think I think it's important to always connect back to who's listening to it. And I think one of the easiest ways, this is one of those things that I do like in my emails, because people seem to really like my emails and kind of fall in love with reading them every day, is I'll like tell a story about myself and then I'll bridge it with a very simple sentence, which is, so why am I telling you this? Yeah. And then I can tell somebody the takeaway. And so I think that's one of those things that you can do no matter what. And that works for anybody, whether you're making a video, whether you're doing a speech, whether you're writing a book, whether you're writing emails, content, social media posts, whatever, like connecting it back. And it makes you do that as the creator, of like, hey, here's why I'm telling you this, not just so you know my crazy story, but here's why it matters to you, and I'm thinking about you still.
Do you feel like you run into people fairly often, or not so much, who say, oh, like I have always thought about writing a book, but I'm not a writer?
Not very often. Every once in a while people say that,
Yeah.
But it's pretty, I feel like probably with my marketing, I just don't attract that kind of person. I attract more of the people who have been trying to do it for a while and already aligned with being a writer. That being said, some people are not writers, and they're more like orators. Good word.
What do you mean by that exactly?
Like they speak. Like they're better. Like they're storytellers,
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the ways that people can write books too, is you can go through the process. And I actually talk about that in the 30-day book writing challenge. And I'd say it's maybe like 5 to 10% of people are that way. Most people who, go through it are definitely like writers or feel like they want to write their own book. But there are a certain percentage of people that they're just really good at storytelling. I feel like I'm better at telling stories in writing than I am speaking like this. And so that's my default, even though I like talking, but other people are just immaculate storytellers, and that's a really good thing for them to do if they want to write a book.
I didn't necessarily feel like, I think coming in to write the book, I didn't think of myself as a writer, but I also didn't think of myself as someone who couldn't write. I just was kind of a blank slate. I was like, okay, well, and I think I kind of surprised myself, at the end of the day, but that definitely took a lot of support by you and 2 other editors. And I also felt like, part of the process that overwhelmed me in my head, at least, was like, okay, once I write it, then what? I don't know how to self-publish. I don't know if you go down that road, how do I get online? How do I do all this stuff? And it was super helpful to have you and then another gal too help me like get all that stuff just dialed in, because I didn't know, like, that's worth so much in terms of just having support. Otherwise, like you said, you could write for years and years and years and never actually get anything out for anyone else to read, because you're making it out to be so much more difficult in your head.
Yeah.
than it really is, especially with technology these days and Amazon and, that sort of thing. But
well, I mean, that's the thing too. It's like one of those things where, unless you're trying to be a serial book writer, then it's not something you go through a lot of times. So you wouldn't be familiar with that process. And so it can make sense to have somebody who has walked that path to show you what to do. So
pivoting a little bit, just talking more about what you've done with this book writing challenge, which I think is very succinct and like effective and efficient. What's that? Oh, pizza. You got to be watching this on. You got to be watching this on YouTube. He's just throwing
now I'm gonna want to eat
emojis at
pizza
me
afterwards. Yeah,
I know. I probably will actually. But do you feel like you've always been really good at streamlining, simplifying, dialing things down, or is that something that you've learned over the years? Yeah. And if not at all, then how did you learn that to be one of your, character traits or strengths?
Yeah, that is definitely one of those things that I think has come kind of slow for me, if I'm brutally honest. I think what happens, at least for me in my journey, it was kind of like you see the potential in having a book, having a personal brand, creating products and programs, consulting, coaching people, all that kind of stuff, but you don't really know how it's done.
Right.
So you have to there's kind of a learning curve for figuring that stuff out. Now, certainly you can shortcut a lot of that learning curve by learning from other mentors, which I know you're huge on, just like I am, so that you can accelerate your skill development in those areas. And I think after some time, once kind of skill development happens, then you can improvise a little bit. It's kind of like, jazz music or something. I play the drums, but once you learn fundamentals of something, after a while, then you can start to play around with it. You can have more fun. I think in the world that we live in today, that there's not as much patience for skill development. And I rant on this a bit because I think oftentimes, because of the way that images get portrayed online and social media and all this kind of stuff, like people just expect, like, I'm going from 0 to hero in like a month or 6 months or a year or even 5 years. And to me, I'm kind of like, dude, but you're okay. You're freaking okay working 40 years for somebody else to maybe, make 6 figures, but you're tripping out that you have to learn real skills over here, and you won't give yourself 5 years or 10 years to do that, and so that's my rant
that's really
on that side of things. It's like just giving yourself more time to acquire those skills so that you can simplify. That being said, what I've learned, which I wish I had learned a long time ago, is that most of the crap that we spend time on isn't actually doing anything at all. It's not moving the needle. Like, it's just not. It's not. And not all activities are equal by any means. If anybody has not read the book, The 80-20 Principle, people throw it around all the time, but if you've never actually read it, it's a life-changing book. And I don't know. I don't remember when I first got into 80-20, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago or something like that. But I realized once I read it that there were certain things that if you do, you don't get like a 1-to-1 return on them. You get like a 1 to 800 return on them. And that's really the key, I think, to simplifying things, is you're looking for patterns where if you do this thing, you get a disproportionate output. Let me bring that back down to earth, so it's not just like theoretical. So you can spend all day long creating content, writing things, coming up with ideas, but your income will move zero if you don't have anything to offer, if you don't have something that somebody can pay you for. Okay. And this is what happens a lot. People think, oh, I need to be on LinkedIn. I need to be on TikTok. I need to be on Facebook. And it's like, sure, all of those platforms will work, and they do work. What you're not focused on probably is making enough offers and testing different offers, right? And that's what moves the needle, where then you can do more of the things that you want to do. Different example, like during COVID, I got fat, like fat. And I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I was like, what is going on, dude? Because I used to be a ski patroller, right? Ski all the time. I was like super lean, couldn't put on weight to save my life, right? And then I looked at myself in the mirror in August of 2020. I was like, you are fat, bro. And I was like, okay, I'm doing something about it. And I've always been a person who worked out. Like, I have to work out because like I go crazy. Not that I'm like some fitness model by any means, but I was like, this is not it. And I said, okay, I'm going to actually hire somebody now. And I never hired anybody before. And, what I loved about my trainer, who helped me identify what those essential things were, because I thought I knew what they were, but I didn't, because he had so much more experience. It's kind of like people think they know what the book writing process is, but I have a really good understanding of that because I've helped 8,500 plus people,
Right.
And so, but he simplified it down to me, to like 3 or 4 things that those things, they were the needle movers. Right. And then it made it so I lost 30 pounds in 3 months and
30 days. Oh.
In 90 days, 3 months, 12 weeks, whatever.
Still really good. Though.
Amazing. Yeah. And I got like really 6-pack for the first time in my life, which no matter what I did before, no matter when I was ski patrolling, like that never happened before. And I was like, holy crap. Okay. This like totally works. So I know that's a long-winded rant around that. I think it's a combination of things, right? So it's like, if you're going to realizing that there are things in every area of life that if you identify what those needle movers are, they give you a massive return, much bigger than they should for what the activity is. Secondly, realizing you're not going to be able to figure all those things out. So that's where having help is valuable. And then the third piece of that would be giving yourself enough time to develop skills so that you can improvise and figure out what those things are.
Yeah, I think that's, a lot of what you just said. There's a lot of gold nuggets in there. I do feel like you've told me several times, in the past when we've had conversations like, dude, you need more offers. I'm like, yeah, oh, shit. Like, it's so easy to forget that sometimes, especially as an entrepreneur. If you're, it's just easy to get lost in the, I need more followers. I need more engagement. I need more social media content. It's like, dude, what are you offering? What are you putting out there? And I think that still goes back to an underlying question of, again, what's why do you want to write a book? Like, what's the end result? What's the outcome? And I think that's really important, which I know you kind of really get into, like you said, in that first week of the challenge, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's super valuable. I had another question that kind of slipped my mind. I'm sure it'll come back to me. Book writing.
Well, your biceps are looking great, though.
Hey, thank you. I need to find
a dumbbell emoji now.
Yeah, please do. As I'm scratching the back of my head. I had a good question. I totally lost it. That's okay. For people who are essentially like the book writing challenge, what I liked about it is that it's really just kind of chunks things down into like bite-sized pieces. For me, and I think I told you on one of our first calls, like I am very susceptible to being overwhelmed, strung out, spread too thin. It's just what I do. Like I do too much. I take on a lot of things and then I'm like, whoa, and I think about it, and it came back to me. I was going to say it's very similar to those that I worked with when I was working in weight loss. Like they spent 10 years, 20 years, an entire lifetime, supporting bad habits, which have led to a lot of weight gain, right? But then they wanted to lose weight in 30 days. Like they wanted to change their life, so quickly, and the lack of patience was oftentimes frustrating for me too, as their health coach and trainer, like we have to kind of unravel this thing slowly over time. And I think that was also a challenge for me, as I wanted to get the book done. I wanted to move things, but up came a lot of stuff for me personally. as I was writing a book that was very personal and near and dear to my heart. And I had to find I had to oftentimes tell myself just to relax. I actually had to step away from it for like 6 months, to be honest, because I just was, and there's other stuff going on in my life, but I do feel like having someone in your corner, like you were talking about your trainer for you, having you in my corner. It's always nice to have someone who kind of doesn't see your limiting beliefs or know your stories, or like be in your corner and have your back and say, it's okay. Just give yourself grace and keep chipping away at it. Right.
Yeah.
So in terms of the 30-day challenge, is that something when people go through it, it's just all by themselves? Do they have access to other people in the community? Like, what does that actually look like? If people say cool and they go to your website, they sign up for it, it starts
It starts on the Monday after they register, or as soon as if they register on a Monday, then it starts that day. Otherwise, it starts the next Monday.
The upcoming Monday. Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
What that process all look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, like one of the things that I wanted to do with it, that's certainly different about this program than any of the other iterations that I've had in the past, is I really did want it to be as streamlined as possible, right? And chunked out into very, very consumable, bite-sized daily lessons and assignments. And I think truthfully, right now in the world, that's needed. Like, so if you're creating products of any sort, the more that you can chunk things down, just to like do this on Monday, do this on Tuesday, do this on Wednesday, do this on Thursday, you put yourself actually at a huge competitive advantage, because there's so much information. And I mean, even listening to a podcast, right? Like you're trying to remember certain nuggets out of like an hour-long conversation, right? And hopefully you just grab onto one from this. That's
totally
in my mind, like that's the goal. Did you get one idea? Not 47 things, because you're not going to remember them. But when you create products that way, where you chunk it down into bite-sized amounts where people can actually learn and then execute that day, what happens is you start stacking wins, and then that builds momentum, which then reinforces the habit, which then makes it so people get so much farther along than they ever would have gotten on their own. And we still have like email support throughout the entire program. I have one of my author coaches who she does that. It used to be me who did all of it. Now she does most of it, just because the business has grown and all that kind of stuff. But
you've got to ski.
I got to ski, man.
There's 100 days. Like, hello. Can't just be at your computer.
Can winter get here? Like, I'm tired of 90 degrees. Like, I'm done. I joke. I'm like, I get so sick of summer at this time of the year. This is August, so yeah. Everybody else is like, I wanted summer to go on forever. I'm like, forget this. Let's get back to winter. Anyway, so I think just chunking things down and simplifying them for people, because we're all overloaded with messages and content and information all the time. And so 100%. If you'll actually teach better as well if you can chunk things down. Like, here's what you need to work on, today and tomorrow, or here's what you need to do to win. I don't know, just the people that I think have impacted myself the most have been oftentimes those people that just chunk it down to like, just do these things and you're good to go. Yeah.
That's, I do feel like you said, in the day and age that we live with so much distraction and notifications and things that are vying for our attention, it's nice when you can just have a small list of like, okay, today, this is all I'm going to focus on. And I think that's why that challenge has been so successful. And like you said, bringing in all the things that you've learned personally in doing what you've done, working with so many people, to then give people exactly what they need to know when they need to know it, so that they don't overwhelm themselves and they don't, shoot themselves in the foot and give up on the process. I think that's because I do feel like each one of us has a story to tell, or a song to sing. We all are extremely creative people. And yet if all we do is focus on work, providing, clocking in, clocking out, a life can zoom by pretty darn fast, and I think
I agree with
for
that
you and I,
so much.
Yeah. It's like focusing on
I think
skiing.
prioritizing play is like one of the things that has gotten lost, like, I know I haven't talked about this much, but so I have a new book that I wrote it in 11 days. It's coming out pretty soon. It's called Create First, Consume Second. And it's this, what I call a rebellious 25-minute morning ritual that truthfully will change so many areas of your life, but it'll make you more money, it'll make you happier, and it'll most importantly make you more creative. And I think there's these two areas of our lives that have gotten very, very neglected. And that is the like creating stuff. It is so easy to consume everyone else's stuff all of the time. It's so easy to wake up, grab your phone. Before you know it, you're checking email, looking at Instagram or Facebook. And now what have you done? You've consumed a bunch of other people's messages, and you've closed off access to your voice and your insight first. And so that's really kind of like the premise of Create First, Consume Second, is like, no, you prioritize creativity first, and you prioritize adding value to the world in some way before you intake anybody else's stuff. And then what that does is that opens up a container so that you can consciously consume other people's ideas, for your own growth. And you also created so much more fulfillment, so you have time to go and play and do fun things again, which I think is also one of those things. Like, there's this lost art of creating and playing and contemplating and being bored again, that are really, really, really good things that lack so much in our society. Because how are you going to hear your best ideas? How are you going to enjoy life the most if, those don't become priorities for you?
Right. Well, going back to full circle, going back to our time in Mexico, not that I was bored by any means, there was an adventure going on in my stomach. But I would say
a lot of cardio going back and forth.
Yeah. You and I had a couple of conversations for sure. I spent a lot of time thinking while I was on the porcelain throne. And I was just, I talk about the idea of like taking self audits, just re-auditing life. And out of that week down in Mexico, I pulled back on the podcast, which I think was valuable in many regards. I pulled back on like 3 other big things. They just weren't serving me, and got back to just feeling lighter. Like I didn't feel like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, but so much of what I talk about in the book that I know you've heard about too, it's just that whole, like, the flip side of the coin from achievement and success is fun, fulfillment, like joy, being outside, like. And I just realized, the older we get, it's like, shit, life is passing you by. You can't take your health for granted, so it's like, enjoy it, get outside, do those things that you want to do. And I've been like, what's interesting is, like, a lot of times we do feel like, oh, but if I had to do that, then I'm going to sacrifice something else. But what I love about your question, which is like, how can I ski at least 100 days a year and make more money than I've been previously making, and I think that's a valuable question for anyone who's listening to this podcast, because the whole idea, like I said, is all about kind of designing your lifestyle the way that you choose, right? And it's got to be not just around provision, but it's got to be creating the life, right? Creating before you consume. So I'm stoked to read that book. You said real quick in closing, you said what'd you call it? A 25-minute
rebellious morning ritual.
Rebellious. Can you elaborate on that? Rebellious, the use of rebelliousness, kind of like fearlessness.
Yeah, well, I think that the reason that I call it rebellious is because right now, multi-billion-dollar tech companies, all sorts of science that is behind these things is stacking the odds against us to consume first. And it actually, and it's also just like physically and neurologically addicting to grab your phone and look at it and start intaking and inputting other people's ideas. And so in this day and age, I truthfully believe that it is a rebellious act to put a pause on that impulse to go consume stuff. And say, wait a minute, before I do anything else, I am going to create something first. And this is literally the first thing that I do. So it's like I wake up, my phone goes on airplane mode. I don't look at it. I grab my computer, have coffee that, is on the coffee pot, grab a coffee, and I come outside and I go immediately into writing something. Because to me, that's the most natural creative expression for me. And I think it's also the one that's easiest for people to win too. Like, if you're a painter, that's awesome. Sometimes it just takes a little bit more setup time, like to get your paints out and set up your easel and all that kind of stuff. So it's an easy way to create first and win. But whatever the thing is for you, I encourage you to try it out. Like I've had students that have been trying this out now for several months now, and they report back to me just like, man, I just noticed such a big difference in the way I feel and how much, like by 7 a.m, they'll feel like they already accomplished more in a whole day because they created something first, right? They did the important stuff first. And then what I also noticed is by going into that, accessing your creative insights becomes so much simpler and easier because it's like a muscle that you've like used so many times now that it's so easy to drop into that. And then when I'm out and about, like just the channel is like a lot more open. So I get better business ideas. I get all sorts of just better ideas. I feel happier. And, the business also reflects that. So it's one of those very simple things. But I truthfully think it's an act of rebellion against, how the big tech companies and our physiology and neurology is, trying to drag us over here again.
Oh yeah, gosh, 100% agree. And that's kind of what I was alluding to too, like taking a week out of my normal day life to come down and hang out with you and all the other amazing people that were with us. It just gave me time to break out of my normal routine and to really think about. That's why I enjoy traveling regardless, but it helps give me a little bit more perspective about what's truly important.
Yeah.
And it helps me look at like, what am I doing? And is it really breathing life into me or is it sucking the life out of me? Right. So I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, we all need that. I needed it too. I needed it down. I didn't realize that either. Cause I can definitely be like I feel like I play a lot, but I also feel like I'm really disciplined about creating and producing too. And so there is a lot to be said for also just giving yourself a week or whatever to just breathe.
Yeah. Amen.
And
Amen.
We all need that too.
Yeah. Going back to what you said, a lot of people, myself included, really enjoying reading your emails because you write one like every day, right? Pretty much, almost.
Yeah, nearly every day.
It's awesome. Yeah, nearly every day.
Usually like 6 days a week, sometimes 7. Yeah.
Yeah. How do people get on your email list? How would they then find out about your book when it comes out, your 30-day email challenge, book writing challenge, all those things?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of a recluse in that area too, but there I'll tell you the way. So I used to post on social media, and I don't post anything on social media anymore except just like skiing and family stuff. And I just run ads. So you can either be a customer, which I would love to have you if you want to write a book and join the 30-day book writing challenge, or I do have an early bird email list, or early bird list for my new book, which is at createfirstconsumesecond.com. And then you can hop on the main list there as well. So
perfect. Yeah. Amazing. I'll include that in the show notes and in my social media posts and that sort of thing. But create first, consume
second.com.
Beautiful. Otherwise they could follow you on social media, but they're just going to watch you skiing days.
There are actually links on there though. Yeah. So in the bio thing, whatever. But
okay. Yeah.
I actually need to go add the new book bio over there too. So
you do.
Instagram.com.
They're
all there on Instagram.
/Joshua J Sprague. I'll put that into the
Don't
show
even
notes
try and spell it.
Yeah, it's all right. So many different versions of it. The 30-day book writing challenge, your email list, the new book. Dude, you got a lot of good stuff going on. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thanks for spreading your goodness all over the ears of the listeners. Yeah, that came out wrong, but yeah, dude, I'm just grateful to call you a best friend, and grateful to have you in many regards mentoring me along the way too. So thank you.
Well, it goes both ways, man. Yeah, no, it goes both ways. I love seeing how you've executed on this framework that you put together in your book and all the people that you're helping. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
I'm very grateful. I just literally in the last 24 hours, I've had probably 3 other dudes on social media just shoot me DMs like, dude, your book's awesome. I'm like, thank you. So, I mean, I wouldn't be able to do that without the support of my team and a good book funnel and all those good things that go on in the background. But yeah, wouldn't have a book without you. So thank you for that support too. Yeah.
I mean, it's really you on that, man, because I think it takes a lot of courage to put your ideas and your thoughts and your stories, especially, you've had some really intense ones and some very vulnerable ones. If you haven't read Johnny's book, what the hell are you doing? Go buy it. Seriously.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Awesome, bro. Well, thank you. Any other last thoughts, closing memories, emojis you want to throw at us? Yeah.
Why don't we have a toilet emoji?
Yeah. Where's that? Where's the smiling poo?
You're letting me down, bro. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's good though. It's all good though, man. We'll give my love to your beautiful wife and your kids. Looking forward to seeing you soon. As always, thank you for joining me, Joshua Sprague. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate it,
guys. Go follow Joshua. Go check out his link. Join his early bird list. I'm looking forward to reading that book for sure. I definitely need to implement that. I go through waves myself of like, oh, I'm dialed in. I'm got my morning routine, and then other times I just let it slide, and I'm watching Netflix at night, and then I'm grabbing my phone first thing in the morning, and it definitely makes an impact, not in a good way. So yeah, dude, thank you. Looking forward to reading that book. That'll be fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll catch up with you on the next episode of the Becoming Kings podcast. We'll talk soon. Cheers.